Hi, my name is Jude Matulich-Hall, and this is Titles, Talk, and Tipples. My guest is Thomas R. Clark, the writer of Bella's Boys, The God Provides, The Death List, and A Book of Light and Shadow.
And Good Boy, don't forget Good Boy.
Welcome, Tommy.
Hi, Jude. How you doing, man?
I'm great. How are you doing?
I'm playing with my beard like a wizard is. You got your witch's brewer hat on.
There we go. Yeah. So you're wearing a wizard hat.
I got a wizard hat, which is basically a witch's hat, but
yeah.
you know.
And
these are the ones you see advertised on Facebook.
Oh yeah.
You know?
Oh okay.
And then you look at them and they're like $50 a piece. I got this for $10. It scares the care. Okay.
There you go.
I said, "Oh man, my sister calls me Gandalf." So I was like, "Ooh, I'm gonna grab that hat."
Yeah.
Because now she can really call me Gandalf.
There you go.
You know,
yeah, this is.
And if I didn't use Just for Men, I'd look like Syrian. Anyway, so
the hat was an accident because I asked my husband. I said, "Do we have any weird hats around the house?" And yeah, we do. Of course, we have pirate hats and everything else. He was like, "There's a witch's hat out in the garage." I said, "What?"
Ooh, there you go.
So he brought this. Yeah. So we both have our magical hats on. Cast some spells.
Oh yeah, I've been wearing this at every little craft show and miniature convention that I've attended this year because I'm still at that level where I'm still, climbing up the ladder.
Oh sure.
And I got, I'm building my fan base.
Yeah.
And so I got to do something to get people to come in. So why not wear the hat?
Why not wear the hat?
I sit there. I look like a garden gnome. And
there you go.
People think I'm friendly, and they come over and they tell them I write a graphic extreme horror stories.
There you go. Yeah, they're expecting like Harry Potter type story.
Yeah, they're like, "Oh look, it's Adric." No, it's not Adric.
Nope.
It's Adric's evil twin.
There you go. So what are we drinking tonight, Tommy?
We have a cola that's made. It was once, in fact, the company that owns it was once owned by No More Wire Hangers lady.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Joan Crawford's risen from the grave. Okay.
So, cheers.
Yeah, it's all American colors there, and with a hint of cinnamon.
A hint of cinnamon.
That's the secret ingredient in this. That's why it's so good.
Well, I'm drinking the same. I just put it in my Halloween glass. And so cheers.
I've got so many goblets through this house that they've just been sitting around. I'm afraid to even dust them.
Oh gosh, I know. I
know what's going to come out of them.
We had a couple of things, just like in windowsills, and I pulled one out, and yeah, it was. I washed it 3 times, and I still couldn't make myself drink out of it because it just sat in the same place in the kitchen. So things can get a little weird greasiness on them in the kitchen, and then that dust attaches to all that stuff. And I don't know, we must not have moved that glass for 2 or 3 years.
My wife's got this collection of green glass serving pieces, and they sit inside a hutch. They've sat inside this hutch since we've been together. We've never used these things. They look pretty.
Yeah.
That's about it.
Yeah.
They're good to look at while we're sitting in the kitchen.
Yeah. All right. So we're going to talk about your books, and you're going to tell me all about your books. And you just released The God Provides.
Yeah. God Provides is I call it Splatterpunk. It's folklore. It's kind of like an A20. Okay. It's kind of like an A24 movie. But on the page. And the idea for it I wanted to write a collection that was 4 different stories that were somehow related, that had the narrative together. And the first attempt at doing this was a dark cyberpunk story. And I got into the second story and started writing the third, and I just wasn't feeling it. Then last year at this time, I was taking the horror tropes workshop with Garrett Cook, and it clicked. He gave me a werewolf assignment. And I had already been researching ways to deconstruct the werewolf as we know it. Especially after listening and reading Stephen Graham Jones' book, Mongrels, which is a really fantastic interpretation of werewolf myth. This is, almost putting in aspects of like the grifter lifestyle and spoiler alert, the Lone Ranger's true identity. But I liked what he did with that, and I liked the voices that he used in that book. So I wanted to try to apply something like that to this. So I went back to the original sources of what we have for werewolf mythology, modern day, and it's not going back to Greek and the island of Lycus.
Right.
No. Everything we know about werewolves comes from two sources.
Yeah.
Dracula, because he's the first werewolf, and the Wolfman movie.
Yeah.
Even a man who is pure of heart and says his prayers at night may become a wolf when the wolfsbanes bloom and the autumn moon is bright. Does that say anything about a full moon?
No, it doesn't.
It doesn't.
No.
Not at all. Okay.
No.
And that's the poem in the Wolfman movie.
Yeah, it's great.
Now, I love the guy's name, but because I have ADHD, I always amalgamate names. So let me make sure I got this guy's name right for us here. Okay.
Yeah, that'd be great. I have a werewolf in the current novel I'm writing. And I decided that I wasn't sure if I wanted him only turning into a werewolf when the moon was full. So this gives me some thoughts of like.
Well, most modern werewolf stories kind of veer from that anyway. It's a nature of part of it's a nature of the Werewolf the Apocalypse role-playing game, where they could shift of their own will. You're born a werewolf. Kurt Sidemak. He wrote the screenplay for The Wolfman. And he was an American Jew. And, child of an immigrant. And he wanted to write about the Nazis.
Right. The evils of man, right?
Yeah. And so you notice that the Wolfman movie was filmed during World War II, but is there any mention of World War II in that movie?
No, it's been a long time since I watched it, but I don't remember a mention. Yeah.
You don't see any Nazis in there anywhere, do you? No. Well, you do, actually. He's called the Wolfman.
Yeah.
The werewolf and the Wolfman are metaphors for the Nazi. Originally,
really, is it?
Yes. Originally, the pentagram that goes on the victim's hand was the Star of David, and the gypsies were Jews. But the studio, because of anti-Semitism back then, said no, we can't have Jews there. Make them gypsies, and they put the pentagram instead, the witchcraft symbol. But yeah, the werewolf at that time was a metaphor for that. Now that metaphor has evolved over time. A person like myself who at one point suffered from anger issues and went through counseling for it so he could learn to better manage it. Werewolves appealed to me because that Incredible Hulk thing, you get angry, you change. The same, that's why they appealed to me. It was something that I could bond with. I could bond with that curse that the werewolf has, the rage curse. That's why it appealed to me so much. But there's so many. That's the beautiful thing about a creature like this. There's so many different interpretations of the metaphors for why they exist. So, going back to Sidimic's screenplay and going back to Bram Stoker's Dracula,
Right, because Dracula turned into a wolf.
Yeah, he was the first werewolf. Yes.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Now you're gonna get. Now there was this back in this time, and there's this woodcut from yeah. Yeah, this is all stuff Nostradamus predicted too. Okay, it's stuff that we learned and studied and went back and researched after we saw the Wolfman movie.
Right. Well, there have been shapeshifters in cultures.
Yes, they're absolutely all cultures have shape-shifting entities. Yeah. They do. Yeah. And that's the beautiful thing about this about the werewolf trope, is that you're able to amalgamate all of those together when you tell your stories. Mm-hmm. So you're going to get a North American werewolf that has, indigenous people's backgrounds and their mythology worked into it. Absolutely, every time. Mm-hmm. But for the God Provides, I decided to stay with, what is Celtic.
Yeah.
All right. And much of our Halloween and everything from about Halloween that we do is Celtic in origin. Mm-hmm. So I wanted to have the God Provides go back into, my Irish roots and my English roots, because I'm half and half, half Irish, half English by descent. So I made a family in upstate New York that was an Irish family. And the God Provides basically tells you how they were cursed into becoming werewolves. Now, these kind of werewolves, my werewolves, because Irish werewolves are benevolent. Mm-hmm. They don't go out and murder people.
Right.
By nature. Because the wolf was revered by the Irish. And, there's no wolves in Ireland anymore. That's why. Yeah. The surname McIntyre was a wolf hunter.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah. And the Irish word for werewolf is MacTír.
Oh, okay.
Which becomes McIntyre.
Yeah.
When it becomes anglicized. Mm-hmm. So Reba McIntyre, her ancestors were wolf hunters. Or it technically means son of the land. And that's the word that has always been used to describe a werewolf, a wolf, or a mercenary soldier too.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, the same term is used with the three of them. Mercenary. So I actually made the head of the clan a soldier because of that. Huh. Yeah. So I went back and I researched the myth of Cuchulainn, one of the most famous Irish heroes of all time. Mm-hmm. And I retold it, much in the same way that the TV show Vikings retells history to make it more entertaining for us to watch.
Yeah, you don't want to feel like you're reading a history book when you pick up a story about werewolves, right?
Right. But I wanted to use the myth as a metaphor for what was happening in the world. And implying that this curse goes back many ages and they're not the first ones to be cursed this way. So I did all this research. I went into what names meant. Names are very important.
Oh, yeah.
I did a lot of mythology, taking what worked from this myth, putting them together to be able to tell a new story that was still recognizable as Irish mythology. Because the beautiful thing about Irish mythology is nobody wrote it down. The Druids didn't write anything down.
No, it was just
it's a
verbally. Yeah.
Right. So I blended Irish, Gaelic, Scottish, and Welsh together, because they're all Celtic.
Sure. Yeah.
And came up with something that, people that have read it enjoy it. I think it's the best thing I've written.
Oh, right.
And it's basically Cycle of the Werewolf from Stephen King, with Irish werewolves and druids and witches. And where Cycle of the Werewolf takes place on each full moon over a year.
Yeah.
This takes place on the pagan cross-quarter holidays, the important holidays to the Gaels and to the Celts and to the Irish.
Yeah. Is that the turn of the season or the?
Well, it's Samhain.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Halloween. Imbolc, which is Groundhog Day or Candlemas. Lammas, which is the first day of August, and May Day. Those are the cross-quarter holidays on the pagan calendar. And as each of these stories is told, we go back in time.
Oh, cool.
Each story goes back in time farther to teach you so you understand why they became werewolves. In the first story, you don't even know they're werewolves. You find out that they are. Spoiler alert. Oopsie.
I was going to say, do you want me to take that out or do you want me to leave it in?
No, leave it in because there's little hints right off the bat.
Sure.
Like one of the werewolves loves chocolate milk and knows she shouldn't drink it because dogs shouldn't have chocolate.
Oh, I was going to say, wait a second. Why? She lactose intolerant, but no, chocolate.
You would think she's lactose intolerant, right?
Yeah, but it's
actually that she shouldn't be drinking it because she's a werewolf. And the chocolate isn't good for her. It gives her really bad gas. And it leads to a funny joke later on in the story, but that joke is followed up by the horror. And there is a entity on this apple farm that these werewolves are hunting.
Oh.
They call it their last harvest. Yeah.
And that's a little twist in itself, right? It's because
this book has got so many twists and turns in it.
That's great.
And that was one of the hard things about writing it, is because of everything I did. And the reason I did it that way is because when you're under the influence of fey beings, of these gods that I have, or the god that I had, that these druids that I have in my book have in their well, which is basically Crum Cruach, the snake god that St. Patrick kicked out of Ireland.
Oh, yeah.
And his cult. Now, I based my druids off of an actual real druid grove in upstate New York, Ewan Mound Grove, and they're part of the ADF. And I went to their high arch druid, Reverend Skip Ellison, and he gave the book his blessing.
Oh, nice.
He reviewed it, and he said, "Wow." And he liked the fact that I made the lead druid a female, because he said that was very common back in the day, that the head druid was a Bandrui. So he goes, "Wow, I never."
That's really cool.
I'm glad you did that. Yeah,
that's really cool.
The audiobook's being recorded now. Mia Maravis is doing it. She's producer of a play called Jagged Little Pill. It's based off of the Alanis Morissette.
I was gonna say. Cool.
Yeah, she's involved in that production. So she was born in Scotland, so she has the brogue that I need.
Oh, good. That's always nice.
I like to put the culture. I like to put a lot of culture into my books, and each book has a different culture that I focus on.
Yeah.
And in The God Provides, it's Irish culture. In Bella's Boys, it's actually North American and Norse culture.
So, and in my stories, I do too. And my first, I have my main character in my first novel, The Everstein Chronicles. She's half Hindi and half Irish, and but the Hindi.
You know, my dear,
stronger.
Do you know how awesome it was that you just combined them together? I'm going to give you an advice of a book I want you to read. Okay. It's called The God of the Witches.
God of the Witches. I'm writing it down.
This is a former textbook used to teach about witchcraft in college. And it's written by Margaret Murray. Okay, she was an Anglo-Indian Egyptologist. The Tuatha De Danann, the Irish gods, were Hindi. I
didn't know that.
Yeah.
How did I not know that?
Early Celts. Well, if you had read the God of the Witches, you'd know this.
Yeah.
They were actually Hindi. When you look at elven imagery, doesn't it look rather Hindi?
Oh yeah, very much so.
Yeah,
and
they're all silks and everything.
Yeah, and we can't deny like how cultures, were so close way back.
Gypsies didn't come from Egypt; they came from India.
Right. Yeah.
They were traveling salesmen.
Yeah.
They were caravans. They were salesmen. They were traders, and they came in. Everybody ends up in Ireland eventually, because that's the last place you can go on the continent of Europe.
Right.
Boom. And once you get to Ireland, it's like, hi, we're all going to have a party. You're Irish now.
Yeah.
So Ireland has always been this melting pot of cultures, and the Gaelic culture, the Gaelic Celtic culture that we have there today goes back long before Ireland was settled by the people that are there now. And their mythology tells the stories of those wars, of when the people came over, when the Celts came over and took over.
Yeah. Oh, good.
But absolutely look at that book.
I will.
And like, for example, one type of fairy is called a brownie, right?
Right.
It's because of the color of their skin.
Oh,
they were brown.
Yeah. I didn't. Yeah, that never dawned on me. That. Yeah.
Yep. Celtic and Irish and Gaelic women have high arcing eyebrows. So do Hindi women.
Yeah.
They have the same facial structures.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, there are lots of cultures that can be connected. You can see a parallel between the Tibetan culture and the Navajo Nation.
Absolutely.
I mean, anything from their hats to their jewelry to how they dress, so it's such a neat, with, especially now with how separated so many people feel and stuff. It's nice to just look at how we humans have been connected in the past, and we will be connected again.
Yeah, I love world building when I write. And part of the reason I do that, because I love Robert E. Howard so much. And I love what he put into the Hyborian world and how he created that world. And he created that world in an image of our modern world, of our world, not our modern, but of our world.
Yeah.
And he used things that he's like, there had to have been society before this, and they would have gotten to this point at one point too. Yeah. And it's true. If you look at what's out there, I'm not ancient alien. Yeah. All that garbage right now. I'm just saying, to say that we didn't have cultures before the ice ages that we had is to be ignorant.
Yeah.
And the reason that you're not going to see a lot of evidence for it is because we've already determined that, iron can only last for so long before it rusts away.
Sure.
Wood only lasts, wood structures and paper last only so long before they're rotted away. And it all seems to be about 5,000 years, which is about the time we say that society started.
Yeah.
And when you go to other cultures like the Hindi cultures or like China, you learn that history went back even further than that, because it kept records.
They
didn't have a church burning stuff down and destroying knowledge.
And destroying everything. Right. Yeah. And that is something, it's the more they archaeologists and stuff find things, the more we're realizing that, oh gosh, culture is so much older than we ever anticipated. Down to like drawings on the caves, right? Wasn't there recently some cave drawings were found that they were able to trace back even further than like the first cave drawings ever found? And
there's indications that there's been cycles of history.
Yeah,
we go back to a Stone Age.
Oh yeah.
That's probably what happens after you nuke everything. Repeatedly, over and over and over again.
Yeah.
Battlestar Galactica was right, man. It's all cycle.
Yeah. So it sounds like though you write horror, you seem to have like a fantasy kind of foundation, because you're doing all this world building, you're doing all this mythology and stuff. So that's a very cool combination to be not, writing horror and.
My last book, The Death List, is marketed as a slasher killer book. It's really a sword and sorcery book.
I really. Isn't that funny how things get categorized? My book got categorized under urban fantasy, and my publisher and I cannot figure out why, because it's not urban.
It takes place in modern day. My story takes place in modern day.
Yeah.
It features a washed up 80s guitar hero who's trying to make ends meet by being a guitarist on a cruise ship, on a cover band on a cruise ship, and his wife, he finds out, has been having an affair for 35 years with his drummer.
Oof.
Yeah. And they get him fired from his job. And when he gets home, there's an eviction notice on the door of his mansion that he bought 40 years beforehand.
Yeah.
Here's this guy in his late 50s, early 60s, and he's washed up. He's got nothing anymore.
Nothing. Yeah.
And that's when the Balloon Boy Killer shows up.
Balloon Boy Killer.
The Balloon Boy. Ronnie bought a murder house.
Oh, okay.
And the killer in the murder house escapes from the mental institution that's been holding him. And he's got one goal: to find his dark god, Saint Diana. And Saint Diana is a gladius, a gladiator's sword that his father bought at an auction. Well, it's a possessed sword.
Yeah.
And it turns whoever it wants into a killer.
Yeah.
And its embodiment. It's basically, if you've ever read them, Michael Moorcock's Elric. It's Stormbringer. It's this sword right here.
Nice.
All right. That's basically what it is. And if you looked at Elric as a character, he's a villain. He worships devils. He's of a race that hates humans. Yeah. And his sword sucks people's souls out. So when I wrote this book, I was like, okay, who is I made Ronnie a bard character. He's like a fop. Everything he does ends up getting muddied up somehow. Okay. So he would be in a sword and sorcery character. He'd be the comic relief. And he would be the companion of the hero. Well, who is my villain in this book but my hero?
Yeah. Right.
The Balloon Boy is actually the hero of this book.
Spoilers again?
Well, you don't know that because he goes on a murdering spree.
Yeah.
and when they call him the Balloon Boy, because after he kills you, he makes balloon animals out of your intestines.
Oh.
Yeah.
What gave you these ideas? Where did they come
Well, I know
from?
this guy he makes balloon animals.
Okay.
and he's on the spectrum. And he quotes game shows all the time. So every time his name, the character's actual name in the book is a derivative of this other guy's name. And as he goes to kill you, he quotes a game show and then he makes a balloon animal out of you.
Very nice.
Yeah. And the Dr. Loomis character, the Dr. Loomis character in this is a character named Dr. Penwar. And she's got a very thick Irish accent. And she's chasing after him. But she's the wizard.
Okay.
Trying to catch the guy with the evil sword.
Yeah.
That's all she is. And everybody's like, you leave it on a cliffhanger. Spoiler alert. No, I don't. You don't kill the hero. You don't kill the characters in the first book.
Yeah. You're going to write more?
Well, Bella's Boys and the Death List reference each other.
Okay.
Much like Stephen King has that Castle Rock connection.
Sure.
All my stories are connected. There's a witch war going on in my world.
Yeah.
And there's good witches and there's bad witches. And so far, we've met some of the good witches and we've met some of the bad witches in my books. We just don't know it. And there's also entities.
Yeah.
That are in upstate New York, these mythological entities. And they are pawns above these witches. Or maybe the witches are their pawns. Who knows? These entities work in mysterious ways.
Yeah.
So that's the overall fantasy picture of my horror world.
Yeah.
There's just this giant witch war going on between three different factions. and one of them is inherently evil. You can tell they're evil. One of them is it's the McIntyres and their friends from the God Provides. Mm-hmm. They're the kind of the good guys.
Yeah.
If you're gonna have good guys in a horror setting. And then there's another group that I haven't even touched on yet that I will be soon. And when I do, oh wow. They're Italian. They're Strega.
Ah.
Yeah.
So
I grew up in an Irish Italian town, and there was a lot of do I want to use the word prejudice? Yeah, well, I want to use the word prejudice. There was a lot of prejudice against people that weren't Italian in that town. Because that's what the 70s and 80s were back then. So I learned a lot about things on that level, and I'm using the story as a bit of a interpretation of it, metaphor for it. The bad guys are Italians. Remember that.
And they're not mafia.
They're not. Well, there might be mafia involved. Who knows?
I mean, that's kind of easy, though. It's like that's kind of a stereotype.
Yeah, but they always say the Italian witches are the worst ones, they're the evilest ones. That's a stereotype right there. They get your hair, you're done.
Yeah.
They make the Wicked Witch of the West look like the wicked puppy of the West.
Right.
Yeah,
don't clip your nails around them, right?
Yeah, if they get any of it, you're done.
Yeah, you're done for.
All the Irish witches do is boil you.
Yeah. It's the easy
That's what the Irish do. We boil everything. What do you put into your urban fantasy for your magic?
Well, it's not urban fantasy. That's the funny thing. For some reason, Amazon put it under urban fantasy, but mine's a dark fantasy. Gothic. Gothic fantasy isn't a genre you can choose on Amazon, but it's a dark fantasy, and for some reason they put it under horror as well, which I think horror fans will be highly disappointed if they pick up.
Is it more on the level of like something like Tanith Lee?
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, it's a fantasy. It's about it's kind of like, it starts out detective noir, and I have a detective that meets a sergeant, and they come across a Buddhist monk and a reincarnated demon, and things are going wrong on Earth. Demons are rising to the surface.
It's urban fantasy.
Yeah, and okay, and they have to travel through hell to.
It's set in modern time, right?
No, it's set probably. It's steampunkish. So 1880,
that's urban fantasy.
1880 to 1920s. So, okay. Yeah.
Urban fantasy isn't a bad thing.
No, it's not a bad thing. It was just, it was kind of a surprise to me, because I always thought of urban fantasy in more modern settings.
Well, fundamentally, yes. Yeah. And it's only because of the source material that started the urban fantasy movement, which was two books. Mm-hmm. Sunglasses After Dark from Nancy A. Collins, and a novella from Clive Barker called Cabal that was made into the movie Nightbreed.
Oh yeah, I love that movie.
Those were the catalysts.
That would make sense. Yeah, I guess so.
They came out within 6 months of each other, and out of that, the urban fantasy genre grew out of those two, because Nancy followed the Sunglasses After Dark up with another book, and then there's a whole Sonya Blue series. And if you're not familiar with Sonya Blue, imagine if Blade was a hot chick.
Yeah.
With blue hair.
Yeah.
Okay. If you're familiar with the World of Darkness role-playing game and Vampire the Masquerade role-playing game,
a little bit, yeah.
They come out of that. Nancy and White Wolf Games together sued the Underworld movie creators for stealing their ideas. And many people, when you say urban fantasy, the first thing they say on the screen, Underworld.
Oh, that
or Jim, or even the Jim Butcher books, or the Kim Harrison books.
Yeah.
They need a Blake Vampire Hunter series, for example. Or the Shirley Harris True Blood.
I guess I never think of like vampire stories and things as being fantasy. Of course it is,
urban fantasy, definitely.
Urban fantasy.
And that's one of the things I was trying to avoid with the God Provides. In my world, I'm not making an urban fantasy world up.
Yeah.
It's a horror world.
Yeah.
It just happens to have these entities in it. I'm not creating a True Blood world or anything on that line. And it's something different because that trope's, quite honestly, been used to death.
Oh, yeah. It's hard to write about vampires and zombies, right? It's so hard to write about either.
Well, vampires never die. Remember that.
Yeah. Yeah. So,
and sunlight doesn't kill them. So it just makes them powerless.
Yeah.
Dracula, werewolf. Dracula, vampire. Dracula went out during the daytime.
Yeah. He is closer to a werewolf than he is a vampire.
Well, here's the thing. Everybody's like, oh, Twilight. Shiny vampires.
Glittery.
Kristen Stewart. All right, number one, y'all shut up. Stephenie Meyer, whether you like her writing or not, gave us the right readers. Most of my readers are women, and they started out reading her books.
Right.
But y'all shut your mouths. Stephenie Meyer made me money.
There you go. Yeah. Sparkly
made you money.
Yeah.
Okay. Shiny vampires. Oh, blowing up in the sun vampires. Screw you.
That's no fun.
That's what I say. You show me when do vampires start blowing up in the sun? Oh, and the vampire in the Dracula Nosferatu movie.
Yeah. 1920s.
Another because Murnau was trying to make something that wasn't completely Dracula, trying not to get sued, which he did anyway.
Yeah.
They sued him anyway, but he added that aspect of the sunlight.
Oh, right. Yeah, because those didn't
wasn't in Dracula
in the stories, no. And if you read so like a great anthology to read, I don't know if I have it here. I can't remember the editor. But it's just, if you go back and you read old vampire stories from like, just classic vampire stories, you might get a steak, you might get some garlic, but like other than that, none of those other aspects really apply.
Right. Oh, and what the cross does? It makes him pray.
Yeah. Oh, running water. Cross,
he gets down and starts praying.
Yeah. Well, running water though, that was.
They can't cross running water.
They can't cross running water, which that's no fun to.
That's why he had to be in his coffin on the boat when he came over.
Right. Well, because it's not really running water. It's more like rivers and stuff. And I can't remember why. Because it's
the thing to do with Abarak, the Irish vampire king.
Or something. Yeah.
Much of they say he didn't, but a lot of what Bram Stoker put into Dracula and the vampire as we know it came from Abertac, the Irish vampire king, and the Lian-Shi, which are the female vampires of Irish lore. And there's a Scottish vampire too. And I forget what her well, my dad called them Digger Doos, the Drugdur. The Drugdu.
Drugdu?
The Drugdu.
Drugdu.
Yeah. Yeah. Dua. Or Dua, yeah, I guess is how you say it. But my dad called them Digger Doos. He didn't say the boogeyman around us. He said the Digger Doo.
Digger Doos. Oh, okay.
And I use that in The God Provides.
Oh, that's cool. I've never heard that before.
Yeah.
But so is it because they dug themselves out of
no, I know it's just a bastardized, Americanized version of Drugdua.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, my dad called it Digger Doo.
It's funny, how vampires have been so romanticized because the old stories, man, they stunk. Their flesh was hanging off of their bones.
Well, that was
they
leading up to Dracula. There was two stories that got popularity. One of them came out of the infamous Lake Geneva sex party with Mary Shelley and her friends. that Frankenstein came out of. Oh, let's do drugs and screw. And right.
And
We'll have a
right.
write-off. During the summer, now mind you, this is the summer that wasn't.
Yeah.
Because Krakatoa had blown and there was a canopy of gloom across the world. So Frank, one of the early vampire stories, or Byron's vampire story, and Mary Shelley's Frankenstein are here because a volcano exploded.
Because they were just gloomy.
It's just a way of looking at it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wrote an article for House of Stitch magazine. I do a cosmic horror column in there. And I was talking to Mary Sangiovanni, because she's the queen of cosmic horror, about Robert Bloch. And because his mentor was H.P. Lovecraft. And what is Robert Bloch famous for you?
I'm sorry, I was writing Stitch Horror Magazine as you were saying that.
Robert Bloch, for most people, is famous because he wrote the book Psycho. The first slasher killer book, in a sense. But he used, I learned that though that is not a slasher killer book, that is not a cosmic horror book, there's cosmic horror elements in Psycho, which have carried on into Friday the 13th, Halloween, all the slasher killer books or movies that have come since. It's just remarkable seeing how the seed is planted and what grows. It is
amazing because it's so hard to, like, as we're talking, we're realizing that, genres, almost nothing fits directly into one genre without having tendrils in other genres.
Yeah. I tell people I write speculative fiction. They say, what's that? Well, my joke is I write horror and I don't want you to run away because it says horror.
Yeah.
That's my joke. But speculative fiction, I just blend genres together. I write and tell a story. You tell me what the genre is.
Sure. Yeah. Whatever it means to you.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you were nominated for a Splatterpunk award for Bella's Boys.
Yeah. Bella's Boys, my ode to the blizzard of 1993. Was nominated for a Splatterpunk award this year for best novella.
Oh, good.
And I did not win.
But you were nominated.
But I was nominated.
Something very big.
All the winners of that night, well deserved. They all deserved their awards. And the young lady who won the Splatterpunk award for best novella also won for collection too.
Oh.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
So like Splatterpunk is obviously a subgenre of the horror genre.
Yes.
And so
it's become more mainstream of all the subgenres because of the early Splatterpunks and their presence on the big four publishing and the big publishing companies. And, a lot of them were on Bantam and Ballantine. Yeah. John Skip, Craig Spector, Philip Nutman, David J. Scow. David J. Scow wrote The Crow.
Okay.
The screenplay for The Crow with John Shirley, just for example. Yeah. And David J. Scow is the man who coined the term Splatterpunk.
See, I wouldn't even think of The Crow as being Splatterpunk.
It's very Splatterpunk.
Okay.
That's Splatterpunk. That's Splatterpunk as I know it, and that's what I write. There's extreme horror. That's, in the alley of Wrath James White, and sometimes Brian Keene goes there. But Brian Keene's mostly like me. He's a hybrid commercial Splatterpunk writer. That's why he's got quite a bit more success than some of the other niche writers, because Brian can actually speak to middle America when he writes, and he doesn't completely scare them away with what he writes.
Yeah.
He's like the working man Stephen King.
Yeah. So how would you define horror versus splatterpunk versus extreme.
Well, Splatterpunk's just a little more graphic than your typical mainstream horror, but it doesn't push the extreme horror lines. There's not as much. There's sex in it, but there's not a lot of sexual violence.
Yeah, and extreme horror tends to have
a lot of sexual violence, right? Yeah. Bella's Boys has got a succubus in it. There's sex in it, okay? I'm sorry. There is, but
don't apologize.
Well, I didn't want to. I used to joke that I didn't want to write. I didn't want to write a penthouse letter,
right?
Yeah. When I wrote this book, but then I come to find out that David J. Scow wrote all the letters in Penthouse and Penthouse Forum throughout the '80s, the same ones that I read when I was a young boy. So, in theory, David J. Scow taught me about sex through Penthouse and Penthouse letters. So my whole thing about not wanting to write like that,
it's in your head.
It's already well, I went to a romance writer and I had her look it over to make sure I wasn't being vile or being a man.
Yeah.
I wanted
That's
to be
a good thing to do. Yeah.
I wanted to be accessible to anybody who reads it and not just, a guy saying what he said or perceiving a woman. And she looked at it and she said, it needs more dick. Now the irony of that is as I'm developing this book and I'm writing it in a workshop with Garrett Cook, he tells me it needs more bodies.
Oh.
I learn.
You learn. We all learn.
And that's how that's how the story built. It got more dick and it got more bodies.
Dead bodies.
Dead bodies. And then there's some dick bodies too.
I was gonna say at the same time.
Yes.
Going into
oh yes. But Bella's Boys, I took Native American myth. I blended it with some. Hey, I'm on a podcast here. You can shush. All right. I don't get mouthy. Don't get mouthy. Got to be stern with the Jack Russell Terriers.
Yeah.
So I blended aspects of Iroquois, Five Nations, because they're my indigenous tribe in the region that I live in. And quite honestly, one of the baddest Indian tribes of all time. They really are.
They are awesome.
They're awesome. The Iroquois are awesome. Come on, Last of the Mohicans, they're all through it, man.
Right.
They fought on both sides of the revolution. That's how awesome they were. They just played both sides.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then I mixed in some Norse mythology into it because I like Vikings. Everybody likes Vikings. Vikings are a fiction bacon. There's one of those things that you just add them to a story, it just makes it better. You put bacon on anything, it makes it better.
It makes it better.
So I added the Viking subplot. The Vikings basically got sick of this ancient god eating them. So they brought her over to North America, dropped her off in Lake Ontario, and went back. That's why they came to North America. That's why the Vikings came to America to get rid of Bella. To drop off the trash.
Because they were being eaten.
Yeah, because that's what she does. She's got to eat,
Yeah, sure.
She's an ancient god that fell on our planet, and she's a succubus.
Yeah.
And she's a shapeshifter. So I took the idea for her being a shapeshifter and serpentine. I made her more of a squid jellyfish amalgamation or a chimera of those two. Inspired by the Anihari, a serpent that lives in the rivers around here and will tip your canoe over if you're out by yourself on the water. Basically a myth for young kids not to go out on the water and the raft by themselves.
Yeah.
But I used that monster as one that was a succubus that hunted men that were wayward. We'll call them that.
Oh.
As my friends have called it, it's a cautionary tale about what happens if you pick up the wrong person at a bar.
Yeah. Right.
And that's my love letter to Splatterpunk. I put everything into that I felt was Splatterpunk. It's got heavy metal in it. It's got references to Splatterpunk books from days of old. It's when I wrote it, I knew I had to make it show how much I love that genre of fiction.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I think it succeeded in it because it got nominated.
It got nominated. Yeah, absolutely. So you absolutely succeeded where you were trying. And so the God provides is more just mainstream horror.
Yes.
Werewolf.
It starts out with a little bit of you think it's going to be splatterpunky, and it really isn't. There's some really graphic scenes in the opening of it, but as the story evolves, it becomes there's one portion of it that there's hardly any action at all. Yeah. Okay. It's psychological. And it finally ends up with a Little House on the Prairie type story back, set in the 18th century.
Oh, that's right, because it goes back in time.
It goes back in time, right? Yeah.
And how about Good Boy? Tell me about Good Boy.
Good Boy is Watership Down with zombies.
Oh, well,
remember when you watched the Watership Down cartoon and you were traumatized? I wanted to traumatize the people who were traumatized by Watership Down. I wanted to keep the gift that kept on giving. I wanted to give them a shining hotel moment. If you've seen The Shining and go in a hotel and you see any carpet patterning in a hotel that looks like that, you freak out.
Yeah.
You look for twins. Yeah.
When blood is flowing down the walls.
I wanted to do that same thing for anybody that read or saw Watership Down. Okay. Because I love that book so much. I love that movie so much.
I when I read that book, I was familiar with the cartoon first when I was a kid, and I picked up the book as an adult just a few years ago, actually, and I read it, and it was just, what a great writer. Oh my gosh.
Well, I had gone on a binge. Amazon had just put Watership Down on Prime for you to buy digitally, so I bought it digitally, and they had Plague Dogs for rent. So I rented Plague Dogs, and I watched it, and I looked at my wife and I said, man, what if there was a plague? And she goes, huh. Yeah, what if there was? It would be a different story. Yeah, I said it would be. And as much as Plague Dogs tears you up, man, it tears you up it just makes you want to cry at the end of it. And so my dad dies. And I start writing this story for my dad. And it's about a family of Jack Russell Terriers in a zombie apocalypse. And they're living in a woodchuck burrow. And one of the dogs is pregnant. And they got to find a new place to go before the puppies are born.
Yeah.
And my zombie virus doesn't turn humans into zombies. It kills them. But squirrels are a different story. And so are raccoons and foxes and bats and skunks.
All the things that hunt.
But if you had your rabies shot, you're immune to it. And domesticated animals have what?
Rabies shots.
Yes. So you have this motley party.
Puppies don't.
They won't, but are they born with an immunity? Who knows? So you have this motley companionship of a couple of Jack Russell Terriers, a house cat, a house rabbit, living in a woodchuck burrow. And they leave. And it's the adventure of them getting from point A to point B. It's very Edgar Rice Burroughs inspired too. It's not your traditional hero's journey that we're familiar with because of Star Wars and Joseph Campbell.
Yeah.
It's a travelogue. That's the kind of stories that Edgar Rice Burroughs told. Your hero has a mission to go from point A to point B, and it tells the story of how he gets from point A to point B. So this tells you the story of how the dogs get from point A to point B.
Yeah. Very nice.
Now, if we know anything
I'm sorry.
if we know anything about how these mythological stories like this are actually told, we know that Moses can never get to the promised land. So
right, yeah.
bring tissues.
Oh. And
it's a bittersweet happy ending.
Yeah. And it's a novel.
It's a novella.
It's a novella.
It started out as a novelette. It's what got me launched into my current publishing career.
Mm-hmm. Oh.
Okay.
So it's a very good boy.
Yes. Well, here's the story of how I got it published. I went to the first Scares That Care, and I've written some stories, and over the few years around that, I had a few published. Kelly Ellen asked me what was the longest thing I ever wrote, and I told her 5,000 words.
Yeah. She
told me to you have to just unfuck that.
Yeah.
I said okay. So when I got home, I started writing a book, and it sucked. Yeah. I knew it sucked, but I kept writing it.
Yeah.
Kept writing it, but it sucked. And then my dad died. I said, put it aside. Put in Ghosts prequel, or put in this album called Low Country from the band The Sword. It's an acoustic arrangement album of one of their records, and I put it on repeat. And I wrote a 10,000 word novelette.
Yeah.
And then my wife won a bunch of money at the casino, so I hired a wildlife artist to draw pictures of the interior.
Wow.
And then I hired somebody to do the cover, and the inspiration for the cover was the Random House printing of Watership Down in the 1970s in America, which is basically a picture of a rabbit on a woodcut.
Yeah.
And this is Jack Russell Terrier with a zombie squirrel in his mouth on a woodcut.
Nice.
And the model for the dog was my dog Diego.
I was gonna say, because I heard you saying Jack Russell, so
yeah, I have a trio of them. The trio of terror, I call.
Yeah.
They're Jack Russell terrorists. Yes, they are.
There you go.
No squirrel is safe in my yard, and nor are they safe in the book. So there you go. But yeah, it's my book to my dad.
Very nice.
I've got a trilogy planned for it. Whether I get to it or not, it's another story.
Sure.
I write very slowly.
Okay.
And I've got the ideas and I got the plots written down, but I got to feel the story in order to write it.
Oh yeah.
And the other books are going to be called Good Girl and Good Dogs.
Nice. Very good. Well, you have the titles and you have the
and they're all westerns too. Yeah. They're basically westerns.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
That's the kind of story. The second book's going to basically be Fort Apache. Okay. Where they're trapped in a greenhouse and there's zombie squirrels all over this greenhouse. Now think about it, greenhouses are glass ceilinged.
Yeah.
So you're sitting trapped in a greenhouse with zombie squirrels on the glass. Yeah. That must be terrifying.
Yeah.
Especially if you're a wee little dog. And you got puppies.
Well, yeah, puppies.
Yeah, zombie squirrels. There's a lot of them. And Good Dogs will be told from the puppy's point of view. Okay. It's like the Magnificent Seven with puppies.
Nice. Love it.
Yeah.
So what would that be categorized as? I mean, because
they're survival horror stories, I call them. I call them survival horror story. Okay. But they're my young adult books too. Because I wrote them so they'd be accessible by young adults, because I have a lot of, young preteens in my family that I want to be able to read my stories eventually.
Yeah.
They can't read Bella's Boys.
I was going to say they can't read Bella's Boys right now. Yeah.
It's out of here.
No.
But Good Boy is when I'm at conventions and I'm at craft shows, I'm like, here, how old are you, kid? 12? Well, this is perfect for you.
Yeah.
And Mom, there's a suicide in it, but it's off screen. Yeah. Okay. Here you go. I was reading Stephen King when I was 12 anyway.
Oh yeah, so was I.
Salem's Lot right out the bat. Oh my God, Danny Glick.
Yeah.
That's the thing about Stephen King. I remember reading Pet Sematary when I was young.
Yeah.
And it terrified me then.
Oh my gosh.
Because I was a teenager.
Mm-hmm.
Then I read it again when I was when the movie came out later on when I was an adult, and it terrified me again because I was a father at that point. Mm-hmm. So I saw it from Lewis's point of view.
Yeah.
And the first time I read it, I saw it from Ellie's point of view, the daughter. And now that I read it again, when the new movie came out, because I just wanted to refresh myself on it. Mm-hmm. Now I saw it from Judd's point of view.
Yeah.
As a grandfather. That's the book that keeps on giving, man. That keeps on scaring.
It keeps on
and it's just as terrifying.
Oh God.
And I really think that I think Pet Sematary honestly started the extreme horror and splatterpunk movement because it broke a lot of rules in the genre.
Right. Never kill kids, right?
Yeah, kill kids. When you kill a kid, that means all bets are off. That means that's it. You've seen The Relic, the movie The Relic with the monster in the museum.
Oh yeah, I can.
That's based off a book called Relic, and the actual book of that, the kids in the beginning of it, they get massacred by the monster, and the security guard lives. Right. In the movie, the security guard gets killed, and the kids find his body. No. Well, in the book, there's 12-year-old lunch for the monster. Yeah, there is.
Well, Stephen King has always broken that rule. I mean, Cujo. Spoilers for people that haven't read that. Cujo, It's, Pet Sematary. I mean, Stephen King.
He really didn't kill the kids until they became adults. He tried to kill them when they were kids, but he didn't really kill them until they were adults.
Oh, I suppose that's true.
But you're right. Danny Glick and the kids and the other kids in Salem's Lot. The danger that Danny was put in The Shining. Mm-hmm. Even Carrie, she's a teenage girl. She's abused.
Well, and in Cujo, the kid dies at the end. Unlike the movie, the kid dies in Cujo.
Yeah, Christine.
Oh, yeah.
Christine is...
Those are really teenagers, though, right?
Yeah.
But they're still kids. I mean,
But that book affected me, too, I was a picked-on, teased kid in high school. So I bonded with the protagonist of Christine. Yeah. Or the antagonist, as the case can be.
Yeah.
And all those shitters.
Yeah.
But that book's great too because that taught me that you can shift points of view in your narrative. Because there's a drastic POV change in the second act of Christine, and then it shifts back in the third act.
Yeah.
So he experimented with that, and it works. And you see other writers doing that nowadays. That's where you get your nonlinear stories now from your Damon Lindelofs and stuff like that we see on television. Yeah. Stephen King started it, essentially.
Yeah.
Well, maybe he didn't, but he fed to the machine.
Yeah. Well, and he
did that.
Because he was mainstream. Oops, breaking those rules.
It becomes, Middle America attaches onto it.
Yeah.
Now, when I say Middle America, what I'm talking about is the people that vote on American Idol, the people that, and we'll laugh, but it's just your average American that goes to work every day, pays their bills, is rooted in static reality.
Yeah.
And that's Middle America. That's who, when a movie is put out, that's who Marvel wants to get a chunk of. They want to get a chunk of Middle America to come see their movie. Because when they do, it makes $1 billion. Avengers Endgame, just for example. It's what James Cameron did with Titanic. He was able to tap into Middle America's infatuation with the Titanic, and that movie made $1 gazillion.
Right. Yeah.
If you can find the secret and the key to touching Middle America, you'll become a Kardashian.
Right.
And that's pun intended.
Yes. So what are you writing right now? Can you tell us what you're working on right now?
Yes. November 1st, I have a new story coming out called For the Love of the Game. It's just a short story. It's 3,500 words. It's going to be on Godless. Godless is the new app there that's, features a lot of extreme horror.
Yep.
But there's some Splatterpunk and there's some not so extreme horror on there. It's just Splatterpunk and there's some not so extreme horror on there. It's just another outlet for us horror writers, especially our indie horror writers, because we don't have a lot of outlets.
No.
And Amazon and Barnes and Noble, as you know,
they've
gets us 2%.
yeah.
If we're lucky.
Yeah.
But the owner of Godless, Drew Stepik, he's got a really good plan that he uses. He's not a publisher; he's a distributor. That's all he is.
Yeah.
He helps get product out there, and it's a platform that allows short stories to become profitable outside of anthologies to creators. So a lot of people have been writing short stories. So I took one of mine that was rather interesting. It's called For the Love of the Game, and it's about a home run derby at an all-star game where the balls aren't your typical baseballs. We'll just say that.
Nice.
Yeah. But I'm working on a book called, I'm not sure the name's going to, right now the working title is The Home. It may change to Summer Home.
Okay.
But it is about a haunted nursing home.
Oh.
And you learn that the nursing home isn't really haunted because one of its residents is a witch with Alzheimer's who's casting spells as her brain dies.
Oh.
Yeah.
Very interesting. Do you want me to put that in? Is that a spoiler?
Yeah, it's a spoiler alert.
Yeah. So
No,
I can take that out if you want.
I have ADHD.
Okay.
I don't remember. We just talked about it already. I can read the spoilers of a movie going into a movie theater.
Yeah.
And be surprised when I'm watching the movie. It's wonderful having ADHD.
Yeah.
It's something your brain won't remember.
Yeah.
You know, the stuff you will remember, you're just baffled by. You become a vault of
exactly.
useless knowledge at that point.
Right.
Yeah. No, she can leave the spoilers in there. I don't care. You know.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
I reveal that really early in the book.
Yeah. Okay.
But it's very inspired by Pet Sematary, actually.
Oh.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And it features more Irish witches.
Very good. We like those Irish witches.
I do love those Irish witches.
Like to boil people.
Well, this Irish witch family, whereas my McIntyre family has their Brannigans, the family that's the neighbors. Their family tree flourishes, and it's the big apple tree.
Nice.
This witch's family tree is a trunk.
That's it.
Yeah, it's a tree trunk. Yeah, we'll just say that. But I took, you do it yourself. You write on your sleeve. You bleed on your sleeve.
Yeah,
you put a lot of personal experiences into your stories. I do too. And a lot of this book is from the time period when I first met my wife, and she worked as a CNA at an assisted living home. And at that time, I was working at a warehouse, a furniture warehouse that was allegedly haunted. So I put some incidents that occurred to me in the book so far. And it's working. I'm at a point now where, again, I write slow. So, and the reason I write slow, because I want to write something that's good. I don't want to waste my life like I did before, writing something that was bad again. So I want to make sure it's good.
I think it's important to write at the pace that works for you. So,
and I've worked this through a few workshops with Garrett Cook. And Garrett Cook's my primary mentor in the horror community. I'm prior service Army, and I believe you can never have enough training.
Yeah.
So I take workshops every month. Two things cause me to do that. Number one, I learn something every month.
Absolutely.
Number two, I write something every month. So I have product that I am now able to turn around and sell, because I am spending money on a class, or I want to get a return on it. You know, if anything makes you motivated to write, it's money.
Yeah.
Especially if you spend it on something. Because, think about it. We as independent writers, we pay for editors. We pay for our copies of our books to sell. So we have a lot of costs that go out. So if I'm going to have, I have that additional cost there of the constant, training and whatnot, but I'm willing to pay it because of what it benefits me with.
Yeah.
And anybody that I know, I always tell them, take a class from Garrett, at least one.
Yeah, I mean,
you'll learn something.
Any wise person will always tell you the reason, the reason why or any successful person will say that the reason why they were successful was because they were always willing to learn something.
Yes.
Also always be the student. We don't always have to be the teacher. It's good to be the student.
Yeah.
And learn.
Yeah, it is. And the way Garrett does his classes is we all learn together, and we're all students and teachers together because we critique each other's work in the workshops.
Yeah.
I took a Borderlands 3-hour Borderlands boot camp at Scares That Care a few years ago with Tom and Olivia Monteleone, and I learned a lot about self-editing from that.
Yeah.
So anything that I've learned, I've carried on to when I'm critiquing somebody in the class, and one of my peers in the class, because Garrett's not my only mentor. My other mentor is Lisa Vasquez from House of Stitch or Stitch Smile Publications, my primary publisher. And that's another thing that she's taught me. Quite honestly, a lot of my descriptive narrative comes from her.
Oh, very good.
Because she constantly reminds me there's 4 senses. Remember those 4 senses. And I do. I remember those 4 senses. And when you read one of my books, I let you know what the senses are.
Yeah.
Yeah, you gotta, because
you have to.
Yeah, and when you're playing a video game and you're immersed in it, you want to have that music. You want to have ambient sound of that game, and oh my god, I hear a giggling in the distance that I don't normally hear. What's that?
Yeah.
Go look for it on the video game, and then you find the treasure goblin. That's Diablo 3 right there. I put that aspect into my writing.
Yeah.
With the home the book I'm writing now, when the manifestations of the witch happen, there's a stench that you can smell. And that's signifying that, it's her wretchedness that's causing this all too real phantasm to appear and scare you to death.
Right, because the showing is easy. But can you hear, smell, taste, and touch?
Yes.
Yeah. And so aside from writing, you also have a podcast.
Yes, the Necrocasticon. We're in our 7th year now.
Oh, no.
I've been podcasting for about 12 years.
Oh, wow.
Give or take. I started doing pro wrestling podcasting. I'm a pro wrestling fan. For independent pro wrestling. And it's funny. I've evolved from pro wrestling, independent pro wrestling, to independent horror, and there's so many parallels between the two. It makes me giggle constantly, right down to the egos that you knew and saw on the independent wrestling circuit. But I did podcasting for that, and then I moved on to covering WWE in 2008 for an upstart, a competing site to AintItCool.com. Back when websites meant something. Before before Facebook, really took a hold of how we communicate and how we disseminate information for entertainment news. Back when we actually went to websites, remember those days? Yeah. Now you see the article when you click on it on Facebook. Well, we were part of that revolution of disseminating this news on social media. With This Is Infamous, and I started out, podcasting on that and writing articles. Which ended up leading to me writing, reviews and reviewing movies and whatnot, and got me in the Horror Writers Association because I was writing short stories at the same time that had, in 2008, just started getting published. They blended comedy and different genres based off of the anthologies. So my first story is called Nuts. It's about a family that has a dog that they take him to get fixed, and his testicles keep growing back.
That's great.
We'll just leave it at that.
Yeah.
The podcasting with This Is Infamous led to me going, I wanted to do a horror podcast. Mm-hmm. And the editor of This Is Infamous didn't like the idea of it because there's 1,000 horror podcasts out there today. Blah, blah, blah. Whatever.
Yeah.
So I recorded a demo. I sent it to Jess Roberts at Project I Radio because they did a call for new shows. And Project I Radio was the podcast network that hosted Brian Keene's The Horror Show and Three Guys with Beards from Jonathan Mayberry, Christopher Golden, and James A. Moore. And those are two podcasts I listen to regularly. They accepted it.
Nice.
Well, my friends in the wrestling business got mad because I stopped wrestling podcasting. They said, you got to start up again. So I just said, okay, I'm going to throw a key wrench into the cogs here. And I started out as a parody of wrestling podcasts, but nobody got it. Nobody understood that it was a parody. They thought it was real.
Oh.
They thought it was just me doing all these voices. No, I had a whole cast of voice actors. It wasn't just me. It was 6 people doing this. Yeah. And it was the guys that were doing the Necrocasticon with me. Walter, Scott, and then my buddy Oz. Oz left due to creative differences. And we replaced him with a young lady named Liz. Liz had some issues. We couldn't work with her anymore. Dan Roberts came in, another pro wrestler, because Scott and Walt are both former pro wrestlers.
Okay.
And so is Dan. Dan's gimmick on the circuit was almost Negan from Walking Dead. Okay. And Skip Novak's now joined us too. I met him at Scares That Care in the Borderlands boot camp class, and we became best friends. Nice. So he podcasts with us too. So we got a podcast with 5 guys on it, and we just sit around and talk about heavy metal and horror, and we interview authors and we interview directors on the independent film scene, and actors and actresses on the independent film scene, and it's fun. Yeah. And we're going to keep doing it until we don't have a home for it anymore.
Fantastic. Yeah, that's great. Mm-hmm. And that's called, why don't you go ahead and spell
the Necrocasticon. You know how they get the Necronomicon, the Book of the Dead?
Yep.
Well, this is the Necrocasticon.
So Necrocast
ICON.
Okay.
Yep. We're on every place you can get a podcast at. We're part of Project Entertainment Network now, which is just recently gone into cahoots with the Author Library Network. Mm-hmm. We've merged together with them. And it's going to be pretty interesting to see where the future holds for this little podcast. Our Halloween specials, I don't know when this is airing, but our Halloween time specials, we have 3 shows in a row where authors have come on and done short readings for us.
Oh, nice.
We broke our normal mold, and it's just different authors and ourselves reading different pieces of fiction. My piece that I read is Ambrose Bierce's An Occurrence at Owl Creek Bridge, which is pretty much my favorite short story of all time.
I absolutely love that story. I absolutely love when they made it and put it on, what was it, Twilight Zone?
Twilight Zone, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, oh gosh, that is part of my psyche, that story.
You realize what movies that really is, don't you, in modern day? It's Jacob's Ladder.
Oh, yeah.
It's the same movie.
Sure.
Same story.
Yeah.
Donnie Darko is the same story.
It is, yeah. Yeah.
He's in Donnie Darko, he dies in the bed when the airplane engine hits him. It's him as he's dying, remembering the days leading up to where he dies, and being told that at the end he's going to die. Basically.
There was another one with Ewan McGregor and oh gosh, I can't remember the name of that movie. It ended up, well, spoilers, it ended up being the guy was dying and because a bridge collapsed or something. Great. And
I know what you're talking about. Yep.
I can't remember the name of that movie. Okay, well, but it's the same story. And
because it's a thriller, not a horror movie.
Right. There you go. That's why you can't remember.
Thriller, that word that they use when they're afraid to use the word horror.
Yeah.
Yeah, that word thriller.
Yeah. So this should go out. This might go out before Halloween. I'm I'm behind in my schedule.
The week before Halloween, the week of Halloween, the week after Halloween is 3 hours, 1 hour each of just campfire stories.
Oh, that's great.
On the Necrocasticon. Oh, yeah. And we've got some poets that have come on to do some poetry. Some of the people that are going to be on it, John Baltusberger, James Matthew Byers, Jesse Wolf's going to be on it. Tim Murr from St. Rooster Books is going to be on it.
Oh, fun.
Lots of different people.
Yeah.
So, Scott and Walt do things on it. Skip has a story on there that just makes you want to it makes you cry. It breaks your heart.
Okay. So I'll try to get this out. I'll make it a point to get this out before that, so that information can be out there. Yeah. And so if when someone goes to buy your books, where would you like them to go? What
you can get them on Amazon. You can get them on Barnes and Noble. You can get hardcovers with wraparound covers on Barnes and Noble. Or you can get them directly from me. You could also get my books in digital form on Godless. I prefer that you get them there if you get them any place on digital form, just because I see more of more ducats.
And that's
and that's the thing with us guys.
Godless.com, right?
Yeah, godless.com. So we writers, we make $6 an hour. And that's our pay rate.
Yeah.
So help with our $6 an hour there and go to Godless.
And so if we
get $6.50 an hour.
Yeah. If we were to come directly to you, where would we go?
ThomasRClark.com.
Okay.
That's so easy to remember.
Easy. ThomasRClark.com. And that's
the beautiful art of James P. McCampbell. He did me up as a zombie is on there. When you go to the page, James is going to do some illustration work for me in the future because he's just a talented artist, and I want more people to see his work because he's got a certain style to him that's kind of, it's almost country.
Yeah,
it's almost country art, but on an urban palette.
Yeah,
and that's what I like about his artwork. So
very good.
Yeah.
All right. Well, this has been great, Tommy. I want you to go ahead and plug whatever you want at this point and do your.
Well, you can get my books in. Also, you can get my books in audio form on Audible. Okay. Good Boys there. Bella's Boys is there. The Death List is there. The God Provides is being made in production right now. So that'll be up there soon. I think I said the Death List is up there too.
Yes, you did. The Death List. Yeah.
So, one thing I pride myself is I like my books to look have a certain aesthetic to them. I want you to look at it and hold it and say, wow, this is something I want to keep and hold on to. And after I'm done reading it, put it on my shelf because it's just cool.
Yeah.
And the same with the audiobook presentations. The narrators that I choose, I'm very careful who I choose as a narrator. For example, the guy who did Good Boy, it makes it sound like you're listening to one of those 1950s Disney nature education movies. Yeah. Whereas you're watching it, suddenly all the animals get killed. Remember those? You were so happy when that projector would come into the room back in the day. And then, wow, we just watched an animal slaughter.
Yeah.
That's great. But there's this guy in the background talking like this, going, he's such a kind voice,
Yeah. That's fantastic.
The days before Morgan Freeman.
There you go. Yeah. Now Morgan Freeman is the narrator.
The ultimate
for everything,
narrator.
Huh?
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you, Tommy.
You're welcome, Jude. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thomas R. Clark, www.thomasrclark.com, on godless.com, and many other places.
Yes.
So, and I'm Jude Matulich-Hall, and my debut novel, The Eversteam Chronicles, just released last week. And paperbacks, paperbacks will be are close behind. Should be released next Wednesday, and I'm JudeMatulich-Hall.com. Super easy as long as you get Matulich spelled correctly.
Yeah. She's got buttons here for you to like and subscribe. So make sure that you do that so the algorithm goes up so she gets more subscribers and she can monetize this thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's what you got to do. See, she wants to make some money off of this.
Yeah.
Like Mr. Scott does. Mr. Scott makes a little bit of money off of his Mr. Scott Reacts page. Okay. So help this lady out. Help Jude out. She got her ass kicked by headphones earlier tonight. So she needs you to subscribe.
I need some
and
help
like
with those.
and share.
And share, yes. All right, well, we will be checking out your podcast and your books. Best wishes on your future, and we'll see you around.
Peace.
Peace.